My wife left me while I was sleeping on a hospital bed after my third surgery. You can't even provide. She yelled while I was hooked to IVs. Months later, I quietly paid off the hospital's entire debt as a mystery donor. Minutes later, she showed up begging for help with her own medical bills, unaware I was the one reviewing her case. You can't even provide anymore, Gerald. What kind of man are you? She spat the words like venom while I lay hooked up to IVs, struggling to stay awake after a long surgery. The tubes tangled at my side like the loose ends of our marriage. My body ached, my mind was foggy, but her words cut through everything. And then, the sound of her heels on the linoleum floor. She was gone. For good. That was 6 months ago. Now, I sit at a modest desk in the corner of a quiet office, reviewing hospital debt forgiveness applications. A folder lands in my inbox. I flip it open. Her name is right there in bold ink. Marlena Croft. My ex-wife. She's sick now. She's asking for help. And she has no idea the man deciding her fate is me. I was a warehouse supervisor for most of my life. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, kept food on the table, and allowed Marlena the lifestyle she enjoyed. I didn't mind that she didn't work. Early on, she told me she had dreams. Art, fashion, maybe opening a boutique one day. I believed her. I supported her. We lived in Boise, Idaho, a small 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with sagging trees and neighbors who kept to themselves. I worked 12-hour shifts and came home sore, often with dust in my lungs. Marlena was usually curled on the couch watching TV, but I didn't complain. I thought it was enough just to provide. My back gave out one winter when a pallet jack slipped, and I tried to stop a falling crate from crashing into the loading bay. That was the first surgery. Marlena wasn't thrilled about it, but she was there. The second one was worse. Recovery took months. I had to go on light duty, which meant less overtime, less money, more time at home. She started pulling away. Her tone changed from concern to cold. Meals became microwave dinners. Conversations turned into long silences. At night, she faced the wall, saying she was too tired. I felt like I was slowly being erased from my own life. By the time of the third surgery, things had fallen apart entirely. I remember waking up groggy, in pain, still sedated. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I heard her voice. Loud, angry, cutting through the hallway chatter and machine beeps. You're dragging me down. You can't work, you can't earn. What am I supposed to do? Nurse you for the rest of my life? I tried to respond, but my throat burned. My mouth was dry. I couldn't speak. All I could do was watch her storm out of the room, the door swinging slightly behind her. When I was discharged a week later, she didn't come to pick me up. I called. No answer. I took a cab to our house, but when I got there, the locks had been changed. Her car was gone. So was our joint bank account. I found out later through the bank that she drained everything 2 days after my surgery. She left me a voicemail, 30 seconds long. We're done. I can't live like this anymore. I need someone who can actually give me a life, not a burden. Don't contact me again. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. I stayed at my friend Javier's place for a while. His guest room was a glorified storage space, so I slept on a recliner for 3 months while I filed for disability. Marlena filed for divorce almost immediately. She requested the car. I didn't fight it. I couldn't. My recovery was slow, both physically and mentally. I had lost more than just a wife. I had lost my dignity, my home, my savings. And the cherry on top? I was swimming in hospital debt. Even with insurance, my out-of-pocket costs were in the thousands. I spent most days walking, slowly, around Boise, just to feel like I was doing something. One afternoon, I passed by a community help center. A volunteers needed sign was taped to the door. I walked in, not really knowing why. Maybe I just wanted to feel useful again. At first, I answered phones and helped with paperwork. But I was efficient, organized. I understood forms and numbers and systems. Within a few months, I was running the intake desk for medical aid cases. The nonprofit worked closely with St. Luke's Hospital, the same one I had been treated in. They helped patients apply for hardship relief, connect with donors, even erase medical debt if the circumstances were dire enough. That's when I met Howard, the head of the organization. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and kind, always carrying a travel mug full of black coffee. He saw something in me, gave me a paid part-time position as a program assistant. I worked quietly and thoroughly, filing and reviewing hundreds of cases a month. Then came the class action lawsuit. Workers who had suffered injuries due to faulty warehouse equipment. My name was included. I didn't expect much, but to my surprise, a settlement came through. After legal fees, I walked away with just under $130,000. I paid off my own medical debts, helped Javier with his car repairs as a thank you, and then donated $48,000 to the hospital's hardship fund, anonymously. That donation helped forgive over $2 million in unpaid bills for low-income patients. It felt right. We received hundreds of new applications after the campaign announcement. Some were desperate, heartbreaking. People had suffered in silence, afraid to ask for help. I took pride in being the one reviewing them. I didn't make decisions emotionally. but I did make them humanely. Then I saw her name. Marlena Croft. Her file said she had been diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune condition. Her symptoms were worsening. She hadn't worked in over a year. No insurance. Her bills totaled $11,372.41, mostly ER visits and lab work. She had filled out the application herself. Her handwriting was shaky. In the personal statement section, she had written, "I'm alone. I made mistakes. I'm trying to get by, and I need help." No mention of me. No hint of regret or recognition. Just the cold facts of her situation. She was scheduled for an in-person interview. We required it when there were gaps or inconsistencies in an application. I watched from behind the one-way glass of the observation room. She looked thinner, older. Her hair was limp and pulled back into a frayed ponytail. She wore a coat too big for her, sleeves falling over her hands. She kept glancing around nervously. When she spoke to the associate, her voice was strained. Not the commanding tone I remembered, just a tired whisper. "I don't have anyone. I don't know what else to do." I didn't intervene. I didn't reveal myself. When her interview ended, I took her file and signed the approval line. Full debt forgiveness. I added a note. No further action needed. Approved. Then I walked to the window, watching her as she shuffled out into the cold. Alone. I returned to my desk, the weight of what just happened pressing against my chest, but not in the way I expected. There was no satisfaction. No swelling sense of justice. Just quiet. A stillness that almost felt hollow. In the following days, Marlena's file was processed like any other. No one on the team suspected a thing. Her debt was cleared. A letter would be mailed out within the week, printed in generic font, thanking her for applying and letting her know her balance had been resolved in full. No name attached. No recognition. Just policy. I tried to bury myself in other files. Cases from veterans, single parents, even teenagers who'd been burdened by emergency bills after car accidents. They needed me more than she did. And yet, her name stuck in my mind like a splinter. Some part of me was waiting. For what? I didn't know. Maybe a phone call, a message, some distant acknowledgement. But nothing came. About a week later, Howard called me into his office. He was leaning back in his chair, arms folded, the kind of posture that meant he wasn't angry, just thoughtful. "We've had a few applicants ask to meet the donors. One of them even came by the front desk yesterday," he said, tilting his head. "A Ms. Croft. Said she just wanted to say thank you. Any idea who that was?" I shook my head. "No," I said simply. He didn't press. He trusted me, and he had no reason not to. Marlena had come looking, but it seemed she hadn't stayed long. Probably realized no one would tell her anything. We don't disclose donor names. It's one of the few hard rules in our office. But something about her showing up stuck with me. She had been willing to beg. That wasn't the woman I had known. The Marlena I remembered would never humble herself that way. Maybe the disease had softened her. Or maybe time had finally chipped away at that wall of pride. A few days later, I saw her again, this time outside the clinic attached to the hospital. She was sitting on a bench by the bus stop, a small paper bag on her lap. She didn't see me. I watched from across the street. Her shoulders were hunched. She looked like she was trying not to cry. I didn't go to see her. I stood there for a while, then turned around and walked the long way back to my office. Why didn't I go to her? I asked myself that all day, and again that night. Part of me wanted closure, a confrontation, something. But another part of me, the part that had quietly built a new life out of the wreckage she left, was afraid. Not of her, but of undoing the fragile peace I'd found. I still lived modestly. A small apartment in a converted house near the edge of town. Hardwood floors that creaked and a gas heater that wheezed in the winter. But it was mine. I had found comfort in routine. Early mornings with black coffee, walks to the office, helping people without being seen. Marlena's sudden reappearance, even indirectly, shook that. I started walking longer routes to work, avoiding the clinic. I told myself I needed the exercise, but really, I didn't want to see her again. I didn't want to be tempted to say something, to make it personal. Weeks passed. I kept expecting another letter, maybe an email, something. But again, nothing. Then, one afternoon, Javier dropped by my office. He brought lunch, greasy cheesesteaks from that food truck parked off Fairview Avenue. "Man, I ran into someone who looked just like Marlena at Winco the other day," he said between bites. Had a cane. Looked like she'd seen better days. I didn't say anything, just kept chewing. Javier didn't press. He knew when to let things lie. That night, I dug out the envelope she'd once left behind. The one with our marriage certificate, stuffed in a box I never unpacked. I hadn't looked at it since the divorce was finalized. The paper had yellowed at the edges. Our names are still printed clearly. Gerald L. Whitmore and Marlena J. Croft. Married on April 19, 2001. Boise City Hall. I remembered that day. The sunlight, the off-white dress, the way she smiled for the camera and told me we'd build an empire. We didn't build an empire. We built a cage. And when I could no longer carry the weight of it, she stepped out and locked the door behind her. I kept the marriage certificate on my desk for a few days, not really sure why. Maybe it was to remind myself how far I'd come. Maybe it was because, in some strange way, I wasn't quite done with the story yet. It sat next to my monitor, a silent artifact from a life I no longer lived, a life I didn't really want back, but still couldn't fully forget. Every few days, I'd catch her name on follow-up files. Appointments, medication requests, assistance renewals. Since she'd been approved, she was eligible for ongoing support through one of the chronic care programs we partnered with. She never knew it was me processing the renewals, writing the notes, marking them approved, without a second thought. And yet, it wasn't without thought. It was never without thought. I kept wondering if she truly believed no one from her past could recognize her. If she had any idea I might still be connected to the place where she left me at my lowest. Or maybe she did know. Maybe she suspected. But she never reached out directly. Not until a cold Wednesday in February. I had just settled into my chair when Monica, our front desk volunteer, buzzed me. "Gerald, there's a woman asking for you. Says she's a previous applicant. Claims it's important." My gut tightened. "What's her name?" "She didn't give it. Said you'd recognize her." I sat frozen for a second, then stood up slowly and walked out to the reception area. There she was. Marlena. She wore a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck and an oversized brown coat that almost swallowed her whole. Her cane was propped against the chair beside her, and her hands were folded in her lap, pale and thin. Her eyes, once sharp and calculating, now looked tired, watery, rimmed with red. She looked up at me, and she knew. I saw it in the way her face changed, not shock, but a slow realization, like something finally clicking into place. Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment, I thought she might stand, maybe speak, maybe reach for my hand. But she didn't. I kept my voice steady. "Can I help you?" "I didn't know," she said quietly, her voice raspy. "I swear, Gerald. I didn't know." I nodded slowly, not offering anything else. "I just wanted to thank you," she continued. "Whoever helped me. I think it was you." The way she said it wasn't a question. It was a confession. She didn't have proof. Just a hunch. But it was enough. I stayed silent. Not to punish her, just because I didn't know what to say. "I was angry back then," she said, looking down. "Scared. Everything was falling apart, and I didn't know how to hold it together. I lashed out. I ran. I didn't mean for it to go the way it did. I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of how absurdly late it all was. Years too late. 1,000 unspoken things too late. "You hurt me," I said, the words plain and flat. "I know," she whispered. She started to cry then, quietly, shoulders shaking, tears slipping down her cheeks like they didn't belong there. I looked at the woman in front of me and realized I didn't hate her. Not anymore. But I didn't love her either. She was a chapter that had ended abruptly, and now she was trying to peek back in, flip the page, ask how the story went on without her. But I had written new pages. I had moved on in ways she couldn't imagine. Still, I couldn't ignore the ache in her voice, or the small, trembling part of her that was finally, painfully, trying to make peace. "You should go," I said gently. She nodded, wiping her face. "I'm sorry," she said. And she left. She didn't come back after that. Her applications continued. Her treatments were scheduled. Her bills were quietly handled. But she never asked for me again. Never showed up in the lobby. Never pushed for a conversation. It was as if that one meeting was all she needed, and maybe all I needed, too. Still, there were days I found myself thinking about her. Not with longing or bitterness. Just with curiosity. About what might have been, or who we might have become if life had broken differently. But I didn't dwell. There were still files to read, people to help, and a life to live that finally felt like mine. The days after that last encounter passed with a strange, quiet clarity. It was as if something heavy had finally been set down. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I just felt still. Not numb, not elated. Just balanced. I didn't tell anyone at the office what had happened. There wasn't a need. Marlena hadn't caused a scene. She'd left without asking for more. For once, she didn't demand anything from me. And maybe that, more than anything else, was what allowed me to keep walking forward. Still, a part of me stayed vigilant. Every time I saw her name in the system, a little jolt ran through me. Her health, according to the records, was up and down. Some progress, then a setback. She was still alone. No emergency contacts listed, no secondary insurance. I made sure her forms never got delayed, even if it meant staying after hours. Quiet gestures. Invisible. Some nights I'd walk past the clinic she frequented, just out of habit. I'd scan the waiting benches and bus stops, half expecting to see her again. Sometimes I did. From a distance. Always looking tired, bundled in that same coat, head down. She never saw me. Javier and I had a running tradition now, Friday night coffee at that old diner off Broadway Avenue. We sat in the same booth every time, the one with the cracked red leather and uneven table. He'd tell me about his girlfriend, about his new dog, about life in general. I'd listen, laugh, throw in a word here and there. I still hadn't told him about Marlena's return. It felt too close. Too strange. One Friday, though, as we waited for refills, he glanced at me and said, "You seem lighter lately." I looked up. "Yeah." He nodded. "Like you're finally out of some fog you didn't even know you were in." I didn't confirm or deny it. But maybe he was right. That same night, back home, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months. Inside was the folder where I kept old documents, medical bills, disability forms, the divorce paperwork. I flipped through them slowly, not out of bitterness, but curiosity, almost like a historian piecing together an old life. There, at the very bottom, was a card I hadn't remembered keeping. A birthday card Marlena had once given me. It wasn't anything poetic, just her handwriting in blue ink, looping and neat. "Happy birthday, G. You always take care of everyone. One day, I'll take care of you." I stared at it for a long time. The irony would have made me laugh if it hadn't landed so bitterly. She didn't take care of me. She left. But here I was, taking care of her. Indirectly. Silently. And not because I wanted her back. Not because I needed to prove anything. Because somewhere along the way, I became someone who healed more than just my own wounds. The hospital announced a new round of hardship approvals at the end of March. More anonymous donations had rolled in. I was on the committee again, sorting through names, reviewing paperwork, checking for gaps. It was routine by now. Efficient. Impersonal. But Marlena's name kept recurring: labs, medications, physical therapy. Her case wasn't going away. Chronic illnesses didn't disappear. They just lingered, reshaped your life slowly, like water wearing down a stone. And I kept doing what I'd always done. Quietly approving. Quietly helping. One morning, I arrived early, before the phone started ringing, before the others trickled in with coffee cups and chatter. I liked the silence of the office at 7:30 a.m. The hum of the heater, the clack of the keyboard. A quiet world I could control. That morning, her name was on another file. But this time, there was something new. A letter. Not a typed one. A handwritten envelope, addressed to the foundation. No return address. It had been opened by the front desk, then passed up the chain until it landed with me. Inside was a single piece of lined paper. Marlena's handwriting again. To the person who helped me. "I don't know who you are, but I hope you know what it means. Not just the money, but kindness. I was not kind to someone once. I think about it a lot. I can't fix the past, but I'm trying to be better. Thank you for seeing me anyway." No name. No plea. No apology that named me. Just recognition. Or maybe redemption. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the same folder where I kept the marriage certificate and that old birthday card. The person she once promised to care for? He no longer needed her to. But it seemed, at long last, she'd found a way to mean it. Weeks turned into months. Spring bloomed across Boise, gentle and wet like it always was. The trees on my block filled out, and I started sitting on my porch in the evenings, letting the scent of lilacs and wet pavement settle over me. Life had found a rhythm again. Not a perfect one, but a steady beat. I still worked at the foundation, still approved cases, still walked to work when my back allowed. I still saw her name from time to time. Marlena's, slipped between the other files like a footnote in a long novel. Then, one morning in May, something unusual came across my desk. A new program was being launched, a pilot initiative to help former patients transition into part-time roles at the hospital or foundation, especially those dealing with long-term chronic illness. The idea was to give people a purpose again, a support system beyond just financial relief. They needed volunteers to participate, and they were reaching out to recent hardship recipients. Marlena's name was on the invite list. It stopped me, not because I was surprised, but because I suddenly realized this could be it. The moment. The one where the scale finally tipped, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with quiet, precise balance. The program included an in-person orientation. I made sure to attend. The conference room was filled with a dozen new faces, nervous, tired, a little hopeful. And there she was, sitting near the back, coat folded neatly in her lap, cane resting against the table leg. Her hair had grown out a little, pulled back from her face now. She looked smaller, but be more alert, present. When the orientation ended, I waited. I knew she'd linger. And she did. She stood slowly, adjusting her coat, glancing toward the door. Then she saw me. I didn't say anything. I just walked over, stood across from her with the same calm I'd learned to wear like armor. She met my eyes. "You're the one running this?" she asked softly. I nodded. A pause. Then a strange little laugh escaped her lips, sad, embarrassed, almost disbelieving. "Of course you are." There was no venom in her tone. No attempt to spin it, explain it, charm her way out. Just that fragile trace of realization again. "I didn't come here looking for favors," she said. "I know. I didn't expect anything." "I know," I repeated. She looked away, blinking hard. "I really was terrible to you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded again. "Yes, you were." She looked back at me then. "So why help me?" The answer was already on my tongue. It had been for months. But this was the first time I let it out loud. Because I could, I said. Because you left me at my weakest, and I got back up without you. And now, I get to choose who gets my help. Her eyes welled up again, but she didn't cry. Not this time. And you chose to help me anyway, she said, like she couldn't believe it. I leaned slightly closer, not out of threat, but clarity. No, I chose to let you live with the memory of walking out on someone who ended up stronger than you ever thought he could be. That silence between us wasn't bitter. It was the sound of truth settling in the air. She nodded, slowly. There was no protest, no begging, just a woman finally swallowing the full weight of her choices and realizing she couldn't undo them. I'll do the program, she said. That's your choice, I replied. But nothing here is owed to you. Not from me. Not from this place. You start from zero, like everyone else. She understood. For the first time in her life, maybe she truly understood what it meant to begin again with nothing but her own effort. And that was enough. She walked out of that room alone, came tapping softly against the floor. Not broken, not punished, but humbled. Free to build whatever came next, but under no illusions of control or entitlement. As for me, I walked back to my office, sat down at my desk, and exhaled like I hadn't in years. I didn't need her regret. I didn't need revenge in the classic sense. The best revenge, I'd come to learn, wasn't ruining someone. It was living so well, so quietly, so honestly, that the person who once broke you had no choice but to face the truth, that you never needed them to begin with, and that without you, they would have to learn how to survive on their own. A year later, the foundation held its annual appreciation banquet in a modest hotel ballroom on the west end of Boise. Nothing fancy. Round tables with white linens, plastic centerpieces, the smell of chicken marsala in the air, but it was warm, genuine, filled with laughter and stories of resilience. I stood in the back, not on stage, not in the spotlight. That was never my thing. I preferred the shadows, the quiet dignity of the people who do the work and let others take the credit. But someone handed me a certificate of recognition anyway. A volunteer stood at the podium and read a short summary of my efforts over the past year. No mention of Marlena, just the facts, the numbers, the work. After the applause, I slipped outside for some air. The evening was crisp. Spring again. The scent of blooming dogwood trees, soft murmurs from people still lingering by the lobby doors. That's when I saw her. Marlena, not approaching, just standing at a distance, near the curb, her arms crossed, expression unreadable. She was dressed modestly. She looked healthier, stronger, not healed. Some scars don't go away, but upright. Present. She gave me a small nod. I returned it. No words were exchanged. None were needed. We weren't friends. We weren't enemies. We were two people with history, finally standing on equal ground, with no debt owed and no power held over the other. She turned and walked toward the sidewalk. I watched her disappear into the night, alone, but not lost. Back inside, the music picked up and someone called my name. I took one last breath of the cool night air and went back in. Because the life I had now, it didn't need a grand finale. It just needed me, whole, standing, and finally free.